finally get it to work. I like the headset that I use for this. But the one negative was I had to take off the splitter to use the headset for my PlayStation 4 when I streamed some Super Mega Baseball 3. I was all discombobulated. Had the headset and the microphone in the wrong slot. The connection wire wasn't really connected the way it should have been. So hopefully this is a slow start that could turn into something much better. So this is episode 3 of Lou Pickney Plays Total Extreme Wrestling 2020. I had tried a complicated maneuver to start my own promotion within the mod, and I'll show you this mod here in a second, the Killing the Business mod. But it just became unwieldy in a lot of different ways. In part because, as far as I can tell, it's much better off to go with what is there from the mod creator. It's balanced. So with that in mind, I was anxious to try something new. I've played this series for a long time. There's new features in it. Let's get into it and find out how they are. I know some of you may be reading reviews about 2016 versus 2020 and who likes which one better than the other. I love 2016. I've had an absolute blast with it. But the more I play of 2020, the more I like it. And I think part of that's the learning curve, because if you get used to things being in a certain place or set a certain way, there is a human nature type element as far as a resistance to change goes. That's with anything. But once you get used to it, I think it's going to prove to be superior to the previous offerings. At least that's my hope, but I think particularly with the right mod, I think we've got a good one set up here. It should be good. So the concept of taking everything as is from the mod, and I'm creating 2 child promotions for All Elite Wrestling. Developmental. Have a men's promotion and a women's promotion. I know AEW has some of both on their program, but if you want to have a situation where you've got younger, up-and-coming women that know how to work a main event, that have experience and the confidence of working a main event, and maybe it's in front of 1,000 people instead of however many hundreds of thousands watched on television, if not more, on VOD or elsewhere. Point being, this is something that would seem realistic. And it's something that's new for this series. You've never been able to play as a child company before. You had to be the parent. I never really messed with that part of it that much because of that reason. Shout out, by the way, on the skin. TEWDB.com. You can see the down in the corner where it's written there. I'm try and transcribe my speech. I tried to use the Killing the Business. I didn't use the Killing the Business mod. There's a Killing the Business style skin, I guess. And I'm sure I didn't copy over the right files to the right place. But it caused it to crash on me a couple of times earlier. And again, that's not to blame that skin at all. It's probably something I've done. Point being, though, that's why I'm going with this. If I can remember the exact name of it off the top of my head, I'd tell you. It's this is alternate choice here from TEWDB.com. So might as well get started. Checking the database. So I mentioned 1 male promotion, 1 female promotion, both owned by AEW. To name the game. I think I used Lou-Launch earlier. I was testing it out. That'll work. Blue space TEW space 2020. The file is just a very easy way to see in a list of multiple save games which one it is. That part's really not that important. It's not like picking a user game when you first start playing WWE Supercard and you're stuck with it for the duration. I'm on there as Lou the Butcher. a story behind that, but I'll save it for another time when we get this thing started. But the story that involved like the one rib I ever pulled in an actual pro wrestling promotion. It was down in Tampa. Now my computer, for anyone that's wondering about processing power, will your computer have the juice to crank it? I own an Acer computer. Now, this is not at all set up for gaming or high-end anything. I mean, it was a rather disastrous experience trying to play Super Mega Baseball 3 on my computer. But I think it was worth that hassle of having to get the refund and then get the PS4 to play it on the PS4, the big TV. Now, that's the place for that. For me, I've been very happy with it to that end. But you should be able, I would think, to run AEW 2020. I'm not sure of the larger files as far as sheer number of wrestlers, if that's going to that would play a part at all. As far as memory goes, I've got a little more jacked up than your typical computer. I've got 16 gigs of memory, but there's no way I could have done the streaming. A lot of streams I've done for a Fire Pro Wrestling World, and I remember when I got this computer, my old one died on me. I had like several days, like, to wait for the new one. It's kind of tough when you do a lot of just everything you do work-wise online, but I managed to make it work. But so I get the computer, and it needed more memory to do what I wanted it to do. So I bought the memory, had to wait for that, and in that interim I tried. It was a slow roll. Things weren't streaming right. The quality was poor. Got the extra memory. It worked just fine. So take that as you will. Hopefully that's not going to be any sort of issue here, because this is a graphics-based game as far as that. I mean, there's visuals to it. It's not just a DOS prompt. And so this is the opening screen when you first load up, killing the business. You get all set up, ready to go. That's the opening screen of the kind of interesting cover choice there. It's the Young Bucks, Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson. All right, so there's Gary Wooder. Person who designed this mod. He did a great job with it too. The more that I've dug into it, the more I appreciate, first of all, how much he had to go through. But all those people in there. And then the accuracy too. I mean, things wasn't like I saw, well, that looks way out of line or anything. It was well done from what I've seen. Now, great, I'm still digging into this, so there'll be plenty to see. I'm still not sure who this individual is. Elio De La Vega. And then there's me. I actually took the time to do like I couldn't quite get the font. That's a different looking font than anything I've got in paint.net. So the next best thing is just pick one that can be legible. That's me. Different headset than the one I'm using now, but that was the broadcast of a high school football game. I mean, I hope we get those back this year or this fall. I mean, I hope it'll be safe more than anything. If it's not safe, it's not worth it. I don't want to talk too much about the pandemic, because the last thing you want to get on here and start talking about and thinking about are the things you're trying to escape from the outside. That's part of the appeal of the game, of any game really, to one degree or another. So, taking the liberty to give myself certain traits stronger, some not as much. Wasn't afraid to put myself over. By default, we'll go with average. See, announcer and color. And that's color spelled like city in color, C-O-L-O-U-R. It's the American variation that doesn't have it. So this is the point where you assign user talents. My initial approach, the thought being my own company that I owned and operated, that I would go more for negotiating, less for creativity. That's also because I was creating a promotion that was based on All Japan Pro Wrestling, Kings Road. So creativity, I mean, you're going to be Misawa in one corner, Kobashi in the other. 45 minutes later, unless y'all tell your story and be done with it. So it's a different level when it comes to creativity. And so the idea is the promotion will reflect AEW as much as possible. I don't want to do the babyface heel divide because I'm not a big fan of that. If I can help it, just my preference on something like that is to have almost a sliding scale and not shades of gray, because that's what you hear thrown out from Vince Russo. Vince Russo was not shades of gray. Vince Russo was no continuity from one week to the next. So you couldn't buy into his stuff. Plus the material was generally terrible as well. Maybe I should put the diplomacy up before I started going off. Although I've talked smack about Russo to people I know that work in TNA with him. I didn't care. I was like, look, this is how I feel about it. This is hurting the business. Anyway, I feel like stupid bringing him up just made me think of that. It's because, like, encouraging bad behavior anytime something he did or whatever is brought up. It just... It's not diplomacy that popped in my head. Actually, we'll go a little bit higher on creativity, so we'll have to use more creative elements than I would typically do in a promotion that I was just running as my own without any other reflections as far as from ownership above, because I will not be owning this company. I have to get to that point first. All right. You do have to do some negotiating as a child company. Very glad I went through at least up to the point of booking the first show to get a feel of some certain things that if you get off course with it early, you can put yourself at a huge disadvantage. And word to the wise, if you're talking with YouTube about putting your stuff up for free, make sure it's such like a 10% is the default where it showed up for me as far as the percentage. You need to get that 100%. And I've worked with Google AdWords for or AdSense for 17 years now, so I can say a lot of positive things about them, but point being, that's not necessarily realistic, but in this case, it works to your advantage. So don't take anything less than 100% from YouTube in this game unless it won't allow you to do otherwise. So now the distribution here. Leadership, ultimately, the goal is to get talent that's going to be ready to move on up to AEW. And I can imagine at some point in real life they'll do something like this. I mean, they may not have me on there, but they'd have somebody to run a developmental promotion. I mean, if I were to talk to Tony Khan, and we could probably talk for hours about the 2017 New Japan Long Beach Convention Center show. Anyway, I've been very impressed by what AEW has been able to do in spite of the empty arena or nearly empty arena and this pandemic that came out of nowhere. The fact that at least, obviously for tonight, their show aired tonight, we won't get the ratings until tomorrow. But last week, they were tied for second, like in males 12 to 34. At the same time where WWE is just hemorrhaging in that demo. And that's not a money demo for now. And of course, right now it's not about thriving, it's about surviving. They'll make the other side of this. I think they will. The fact that in this upstart promotion, that there should be no oxygen in the room as far as the American scene goes, except WWE was just unwilling, even now, unwilling to vary from the things they put in place that intentionally keep the wrestlers from getting above a certain point. But anyway, that's, I'm sure, frustrating for the people that work for WWE or are acutely aware of this, probably know even more than I do about it. I'm sure they do if they work there. Okay, so negotiating, I do want to have that higher, because that's more, I thought, well, I'll just get, whatever the large promotion, in this case AEW, what they would provide. But there's more to it than that. So I was able to sign, everybody that got cut by WWE, the very passive-aggressive jettisoning of everyone that expressed complaints or displeasure. Anyway, so motivating's important, negotiating's important. That high with it. Silver tongue is more to talk to and doing what I want you to do, so that needs to be high. Diplomacy there. That's not a bad setup. Leadership, I don't want to dip down to 3 because I've got to have some control. That's where the diplomacy and the silver tongue come in. I think those two will pair together well. We'll see. Before, I think I had it was a 4 for negotiating, like a 6 for motivating, but a little different the second time through here. That's why I did the test run, because that's something you can't just undo later. Okay, there it talks. That's my resume. It's all true. I should get myself higher in the southeast. No, not really. I did put myself over as a very good play-by-play or announcer, I think they have it. So I'll be able to do my own announcing if nothing else. This is where it's tricky before, it was like the double negative. There are unused user characters in the database. But all removed? No. Would you like to keep all the unused user characters? Which is a yes. Are they trying to like... Is this some sort of a test? See how close attention we're paying? All right. So Sharp is the women's promotion. And I'm just going to let AEW do whatever it wants to with it. I'm not going to put anybody in there. Before my real dry run through this, I was testing some stuff out earlier. And I set it up for I forget who it was. I actually set up with an owner, like a former wrestler. But then I figured out that you really need to set up the whole parent-child setup with the promotions before you launch with the database. So we play as owner because that's not my company anyway. Launch in there. I didn't mean if this looked like the Impact logo of like the Destination America era, but that was like 2 minutes of putting something together in paint.net. Let's get something ready to go. And so I stuck with it. The launch, the L being like an upward trajectory. That was the idea. Not too much time to fiddle around with the fonts. Okay. $0. My first is trying it out, like $2 million. Instead, the money you spend is something that AEW takes care of. So I can be hiring guys, and as long as AEW approves it, then I can go through with it. But there will be some difficulties you'll see coming up here in just a minute when I start to negotiate and try and bring in some talent. The percentage on the merch, at least that first time through, and all the things being equal, everything would be the same this time around as well, that you can't go above 10%. AEW will not allow me to do that as far as the percentage of the merch that would go to the workers, the wrestlers. It says workers, though, which is actually a better title because that includes people like non-wrestlers, your valets, your managers, referees, people of that ilk. So, play as Booker. Please note that launch R. This whole is/R, that's another thing. It's like doing soccer broadcasts for Nashville SC. Just because it's different. It's like you hear it be like, launch is a child company, but it's the plural. And you hear that more in non-American based broadcasts. So I think everything here in the U.S. we got to do differently. And I certainly appreciate diversity and things being different in different places. It would just be a lot easier if we could at least write the date all the same way. I'm willing to change. Actually, for my note keeping, I've switched to the Japanese way of doing it. We've got the year, then the month, then the day. It's like 2020, 05, 21. Some sort of like phone number or something, or your chance to call and win. Back when radio stations especially have live DJs that would do local contests. That ship has sailed. Okay, so here we go. Please note that Launch our child company, owned by AEW. Playing as this company means that you will face restrictions and challenges that do not apply when using an independent company, such as potentially having AEW interfering with your decisions and not being financially independent. Fair warning. Got the yellow triangle with the exclamation point. Duly noted. Although it is better to see this up front like this than get 45 minutes into your game and get a nice surprise. Here we go. It's me. It's launch. Alright. First thing I need to do is go to the schedule. It's going to take me about a week, if any indication from before, or anything that I saw from before is any indication. Typically with this series, this goes back well before this game, it's not like you're getting an answer right away. It'll take their time to get back to you, and some will do it faster, some will do it slower. Generally, I think it'll nudge you in the right direction as far as what the asking price would be. Although you will have some discrepancies, that's just par for the course. Question mark after it. Women's promotion, AEW Women's Developmental, which I also set in the Southeast United States. That's the way I would do it. I mean, maybe it's not as efficient to do it that way. If you've got some sort of training center, it'd be different. But if you want to give the women a chance to succeed in the main event spot in AEW, they need experience in the main event spot before they get to AEW. That will make it a lot easier. Easy for me to sit here in my desk and say that, but if I were to be asked my opinion, that's what it would be. And so we'll see how it goes with this. You know, if you're looking to be a booker, now's the time. It would be interesting to use RevPro. Some financial advice from Brock Lesnar. Carmella getting over. Okay. So you think about it, this is the first day of the first week of June 2020. That's where it starts, which is perfect because I'm playing this right now in the early morning hours, Nashville time, just past midnight on May 21st. Reasonable spot for jumping on. The latest patch came out today, version 1.04. They've been pretty steady with the fixes. They are listening to their audience and finding bugs. And I couldn't fathom. First of all, creating something this incredibly complex and deep as far as a simulator goes, and then find all the bugs. It'll take me months to get through some of this stuff just because it's so in depth, and that's a good thing. If you want to zip on through, I could. It's part of the appeal of this game. There's a lot of latitude. Vincent TV. My idea of this promotion is I want to get reps. That means running a lot of house shows. But you can't exactly do house shows right out of the gate the way you might normally think of it. Peter will set you up like I will not be in position for Thursday game time to have enough for a true card. Plus, I don't like every show having its own name. Although setting up as an event, I see why it's done that way. I'm not going to go through the TV show just yet because I'm going to get that talent on board. Then we'll get to it. There was a point in January, but here we are actually in June. So doesn't do weekly TV. I don't know if it makes a difference if we're live or if we're on like a one-day tape delay. I'm trying to keep the circuit, at least ideally, the Southeast, kind of the Memphis territory, only if it's based out of Nashville. If Nick Goulas would have won the war. Although if I'm going to do a throwback to the golden era of Memphis wrestling, gotta go 90 minutes. We never knew any different here in Nashville, getting the USWA shows in the early 1990s on a 1 week delay and cut down from 90 minutes to 60. But that's what we had. And I cannot imagine, I know Eddie Marlin just passed, and he was responsible, I think, a lot for keeping the boys in line, if nothing else. But you would go in Memphis and be on live television on WMC, or whatever station they would in. That's where it was for a long time. And then you have to almost have to forget what you just did. Go to Nashville, where the TV from last week has just aired that day, and then Saturday night almost always would be at the Nashville Fairgrounds Sports Arena, which later was used as the Asylum by TNA. That place, it dodged the wrecking ball a couple of times, but and one of those things about life being weird and coincidences and all. Nashville SC, the local soccer club, what the rest of the world calls football, I worked with them 3 years ago. Actually, just yesterday was my first broadcast with them for the U23 season. Basically, it was like a dress rehearsal. We had ramped up the following year to the USL, and 2 years in the USL, and then this year we started MLS, which is incredible. In less than 3 years from me being there calling soccer, and look, I love soccer, I love the sport, but I don't know enough about it as far as all the descriptions and all the nuanced stuff. Because I played as a kid, but only played like organized up to like a relatively low age. And so, I played intramural in college and everything. I wasn't exactly good at ball control, but I could play defense fairly well. At least I like to think so. Anyway. I can tape them all at one time, but if we're on a circuit and that circuit's taking us back to Nashville, I'm going to hold off for now on the show, because we get a roster put together first. Now, there's no way I'll be ready to have a show in one day. Nobody under contract except myself. And I suppose I can go in there and have a 3-hour match with the Invisible Man that I call in the ring. But somehow I don't think that's going to be a crowd pleaser. So. Okay. At some point I really hope they will be able to fix the scroll down on the mouse. I really hope that's possible, because it becomes frustrating. I mean, you can work around it, it's just... Let's see. Make sure I'm deleting the correct one. I'm taking the Saturday one as well. This first week, to be clear. Get our people in line. And then it jumps back up to the top. Events aplenty. Okay, so the way this is set up, it would be week 2 on a Wednesday for my first show. Bad Habit. What a terrible name. I mean, I guess you got enough names to fill in. You gotta still get the good with the bad. My first show is not going to be called Bad Habit. Bad habits die hard. I'm not quite sure why it has the, I different shows and events can have their own logos. I don't particularly care about that too much at this point. So I'll go with the 90-minute show. But I'm going to go with actually as a TV show. But before I do any of that, I'm going to get some talent. I want to make sure that first week was clear so I didn't forget and then jump forward and fall into a trap that I should have avoided. This is in gray, and that's in gray, that's in blue. I guess we should read this first. So we're going to upgrade to high quality. This is actually how I set it up before I did the dry run earlier. The only thing that's going to make me upgrade is this to high quality. But, I mean, I'm trying to think how it would be realistically. These are going to be wrestlers that eventually you hope we're going to become some of your top stars in AEW. So if we get some of their early stuff, we're going to have a good video of it. You know, there's going to be. It's not the time to scrimp. Limited pyro. Okay, so we'll do that. It's kind of hard to have storylines. Some wrestlers. I did enjoy having being able to just completely ignore that when I was during my last time through with the Thunderverse in TEW 2016. We'll see how creative it'll let me get, because I've not ever messed with the storylines on here before. This could be a much better process. I did go ahead and create my championship title belts. It irks me so much now, and because I hear it from other companies besides WWE, when it's the actual belt, the physical belt itself, and they'll call it a championship, they'll call it a title. And I get it. You don't want to treat it like it's a traveling trophy that has no actual meaning to it. It's a championship belt. But when you're playing, you know, hot potato with the actual belt itself, it's like you're playing a party game where you can't say certain words. Or shouting belts over and over again. I mean, you can have somewhere in between, I suppose, on that, but it's one of those WWE things that's how that company managed to poison a lot of other companies, just that unfortunate influence it has over the industry. All right. I have 3 championships in total. Launch World Championship. Let me get the big gold belt. Let's see. I can do weight divisions. Fortunately, real life AEW doesn't do weight divisions, so I don't mind being the follower on this one, since that's the path I would take. Maybe it's under NWA, but I don't know. The NWA television title. Always dug that. Got the different logos. Now, obviously, unless they actually had deals with these places to use their logos, they probably shouldn't have, but you know, there are different rules in the 80s. It was more difficult for things to be pointed out as such. Hey, they're putting over the networks too. You think they'd be happy about it? That's what it looks like now. Let's track it down. Up, down, down. Nice. I'm not sure if my microphone is loud enough. Try something here. I'm not sure what kind of a delay I would have. Okay, I want to double check something. Stand by, please. Okay, helps if I unmute my TV, I think. Okay, I'm too low. Definitely too low. It's a fine line, I think. Probably best I adjust the headset first before I start setting levels. I just don't want to peak the mic if I can help it. Now I've got to mute myself over here to hear myself through my headset. That's through the TV across the room. All right, so hopefully this will be a little bit better. Oh, World Heavyweight, of course. Title is considered an achievement. Better believe it. Event being your big event, network event, pay-per-view, television, fairly obvious. The tour, I think, is more house shows. Now, my hope is to run a lot of house shows, not because they're a big money maker, because they're not, but to get the reps in for the younger talent for AEW. So it's a unique goal that's never been possible in this game before, because you can never play as a child promotion entirely independent of this AI-controlled parent company. Pretty straightforward. It's the Launch World Championship. Launch World Tag Team Championship. Well, I won't push tag teams as the top attraction most of the time, I don't think. I do want to have it where if you're the World Tag Team Champions, there's going to be, I don't plan to have a secondary tag title. I will have one more championship, but there's a reason for a third one, not just a middle of the card belt that's there for no particular reason. Because if the stipulations and the rules are the same for the top title they are for a middle title, then why would you want to focus on this secondary belt? Now, you can argue, 1980s WWF, they got a lot of mileage out of that. Current day New Japan Pro Wrestling got a lot of mileage out of their Intercontinental title belt. But in general, if you don't have anything where it's a true difference, then I think it ends up falling back into the thoughts of like 30, 40 years ago, because so many people have nostalgia of the old days, and it was just there. It was like that's how it was done. You had these different belts, and because at that time you had these different regional promotions that were getting together. You pull up like 1985, like the 605 Eastern show on WWE Network, if you got that. You got like the International Tag Champs, your World Tag Champs, your U.S. Tag Champs, your Western States Heritage Championship, a lot of belts. But that was more a byproduct of the mergers that were going on because of the national pressure that the WWF was bringing on, among with other reasons, of course. It's pro wrestling, so it's never simple. The second one of these I like better. Yeah, that's the one. Not that there's anything wrong with that one. I prefer this look. So, okay, obviously it's not singles, it's tag team. There's a place for a trios championship in the right promotion. New Japan Pro Wrestling, where they can use that as like a drawing card on a mid-major show. Yeah. But for me, running a developmental territory where, I mean, it's... If everybody's a champion, then guess what? Nobody's a champion. Kind of like how superstars in WWE has become carny for worker bees. Replaceable worker bees. It's too bad because they have some of the most talented wrestlers around under contract, and then they just intentionally either put them on ice and don't use them at all, or if they do use them, it's often squandered. Alright, so tag team, it's an achievement, primary. I mean, it's a mid-only promotion, so unless there be any confusion about it, we'll go ahead and designate it there. And this is more, I think, for the computer, for the AI, as far as when the belts will be defended. Since I'm the one running it, it's not, I don't think at least, that's not too much of an issue. So we have the World Championship and the World Tag Team Championship. This third one, this is a concept I came up with that is based on how they do like the sprint matches or something to that effect in Mexico. Like CMLL, you see, there's like a 10-minute time limit. And to me, that's pro wrestling has had such an opportunity to utilize time. And think about how in movies, how contrived it gets sometimes, trying to work a clock into it, a countdown clock. Why? Because it adds drama. Now, you're doing this live, so you cut it too close and you have a problem. But go back and watch in last year's G1 tournament, the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1, Okada against Sonata. They didn't have an on-screen clock. That would have been nice, but they didn't. How is it that 2014 days the only one never get this right? Because during the Fox Sportsnet era, they'd have the names up there like it was a real sport, and they'd have the clock like a real sport. I think the problem is when I think Vince McMahon has this certain antiquated view of what sports looks like. Real life Mr. Burns. Anyway, with all that said, concept that I used in my Thunderverse TEW 2016 game is now called the Sprint Championship. And the idea is that it's defended every week on television. 10-minute time limit. If it goes to a draw, the champ retains. Now, if the champ gets hurt, can't defend the title, it's vacated, and you got two wrestlers going for it that night. With whatever discretion you want to have as a booker or whatever. But to me, at least that makes that belt mean something different. That championship is different. It's not just a random traveling trophy, essentially. It's its own unique thing. And you get that with the junior heavyweight championships promotions, like New Japan, All Japan, plenty of other promotions as well. Certainly, all the different weight classes sometimes get a bit much to me to follow. I know the thing that MLW tried, I guess they're still doing, it's just I can't keep track of these different weight classes. Just give me wrestling. Nah, that's not to knock MLW. MLW Fusion might be the most underrated television show in pro wrestling. Consistently great, and it doesn't get the pub. Meanwhile, you get about a dozen reviews of an abysmal SmackDown. But, you know, WWE is the big company, and that's going to get the coverage, fair or not. but if for nothing else, for the Filthy Tom Lawler promos. So with all that, the launch sprint championship. No weight limits. It's a men's only promotion, but I'll still denote it as a male only. Never for the tour. I'm not sure as far as like a special event, like a quarterly, and that's probably the best move for me, is to do just 4 big shows, almost like what NXT has done with their takeover shows that have been so good for so long. No brands. I mean, I'm a child company of AEW. Of course, the game doesn't know that. That's why it's listed as such. We'll go with floating. I knew there was something I needed to change. So I guess it depends on who has the championship. And the belt I used in my dry run that I really liked was the Lucha Underground belt. I'll create a backstory for that. The belt was purchased from producers of Lucha Underground and repurposed as the Launch Pro Wrestling Sprint Championship. Period. And if this were like a best of the Super Juniors where there's an annual event, this is where you can set that up as well. But this is going to be a strong element, at least in theory, for the weekly TV show. So the prestige is lower since I made it a floating championship. But hey, the big gold belt, that's the one. And then the silver belts for the tag champs. You need to save your game. That icon's right there. And if you forget what an icon stands for, you don't have to click on it, just get lucky. Like, there's your workers, your office. Then it pops up with things like office because we're already here. And again, I went through earlier and deleted the first 2 shows that were booked for June because I have no one else under contract but myself. I changed that name. Well, breaking a bad habit. How about that? At least my goal is to not get too clever with the event names. Like if I will end up just blowing all this out and putting in just TV shows, which is probably what I'm going to do, but for now, breaking a bad habit. I don't know, this would be like Starcade, The Gathering. Like every Clash of Champions, like they had to have some sort of clever subtitle. And of course I get it though, as far as you're trying to present a title of a program you run periodically and have some differentiation. It's not just a number. So we gotta sign some talent. What are you talking about, Filthy Tom? Don't worry about that. I like these on top of this one right here because it gets the filthy in quotation marks. myself over here. What is my chemistry like with myself? They're not going to answer that question. I think that's saved. Sometimes in this game, I find myself wanting to click the save, but it's already saved if I just exit out of the box. I'll find the right screen in a moment. I can demonstrate a lot better than me trying to explain it with a visual to match. I would suggest Filthy Tom has more than 3 years of experience. That's not going for right now at the moment. One thing I do like with this search, I found that it remembers your last search that you've done through your names that are either on your roster or what's available out there. Because in 2016 and before, at least the ones that I played a lot of them, when you exit out and jump back in, maybe your maximum age was set at 30. I'm going to hire a 5-year-old. Let's say I went and looked at product or whatever, then exit out of this to show history. Come back to office. Then to here, and guess what? That search information remains. That's a good thing. This is a good thing. Because it used to get tedious in the older iterations of having to redo your search parameters, especially in very specific things. Like what I'm gonna do here, right now I'm gonna start with unemployed. When somebody's not under any contract with anyone. Gotta be a wrestler, what I'm looking for right now. We'll get some managers, don't worry. Get some sizzle to go with a steak, but for now we gotta get some people to put on the card. Must be able to work in the USA. 100-year pro. If you've got 101 years of experience as a pro, you know what? I'm bringing you on board. Call up at 100. Break into the business when you're 6 months old. I guess you're born into the family. King Maxwell in there. It's a men's promotion. Now when I start looking for managers later, I'm not sure with hiring announcers, yeah, basically the same thing. Let's see who the best announcers are. I just want a great announcer, man or woman. Or interviewer or whatever. I'm not sure how deep some of that gets as far as the show goes. Alright, so I'm going to style the moment. They don't have to be based here, although I found they will be much more aggressive about wanting their transportation covered, which makes sense because you're based in Tokyo, Japan, and you're in the middle of a tour and you got a day off. You're not going to catch a flight to Nashville, away like LAX, show up here, work for like a $60 payday, and then on your own dime fly back. I mean, that's just not reasonable. Now, I would question somebody doing that even if I paid for their transport, but although I'm not sure how much I'll be doing as a child promotion for AEW. Active wrestling, that's important. I don't care when somebody speaks. I mean, I do as far as for promos and everything. That's going to be an important part of this, the storylines, but give me the best talent as far as the end ring and find pieces to fit around. At least that's my thought. A lot easier to do this in a game than in real life, of course. I remember when I was a kid and I first started watching wrestling. How much fun it would be to be a booker. And then I learned about just it's actually quite a miserable experience. Got everybody complaining and wanting things their way and pushing and pushing. It requires a certain amount of patience, I'm sure, which I don't have. Okay. Bumping up to 35. As you can see, this was updated very recently as far as some of the latest releases go. So of course I'm going to go after the former revival, the FTR. Don't call it the Revolt. Great tag team. And I wonder though, because of me being a child company to AEW, I mean, it's not realistic to think they would come work for me versus going to work for AEW. It wouldn't surprise me for them to show up on Saturday anyway. Arn double crosses Cody. For whatever reason, Cody as a character always seems to get duped. Maybe not. Maybe they won't do that. We'll see. But I can't worry too much about what AEW in the game is going to do or not do. I'm just going to get the talent I can, and then we'll worry about the rest later. If they want to call them up, call them up. Not handshake deals anyway. This is going to be interesting to these negotiations. I consider this to be a vast improvement over the last game. As far as, because if you're getting somebody under a paper appearance, you're not going to have a certain set number of dates. If you book it 7 more times in the next 5 months. No, it's an ongoing thing. On the same token, it's like you need to give a downside guarantee to somebody that's just working on a handshake, type deal. Now, perhaps at some point you get high enough with the wrestlers expect, that might be part of it, but at least from what I saw initially, it was not the case. So he's going to want me to not cut it down to 10%, but I will. I'll start at 15, because I want to show you at least what it did before when I went through this. AEW blocked it, so no more than 10. And so this is part of the challenge of the game, because I have to listen to what AEW says, because they're the parent company. That's my job here, is to run this company, make it profitable with a sub-company, the child company, but ultimately the goal is to have talent ready to go for the main roster in AEW. Main roster is really more like a WWE type thing. I look at this as more like a separate kind of deal as far as the management goes, although certainly ultimately the control's the same at the top either way. Just no matter how much they choose to utilize it. But this is where AEW, if they were to do this in real life, they would have an advantage because they're actually willing to delegate. And that's something that Vince McMahon really struggles with, all indications. You know, listen, Bill Watts himself said that. Watts didn't work there for long, but that's something that Watts said 20 years ago. I've seen no evidence since then to anything has changed. If anything, it's probably gotten worse. And while it's good to have somebody that is on top of everything, that is making sure that quality control is being met, I don't know if that's the case really in WWE anymore. So yeah, I think the travel costs out. He'll probably say no. If you're going to cut my merch number, then I'm going to need. Well, let's see what he says first. We're going to start guessing. Okay, so this is consistent. I'll only offer 10% on the merch. And he's going to say, I want travel costs covered, probably. Maybe not. They don't all request that for travel, although he may be based closer. Let's see. Southeast. Okay, that's why. Because I'm based in the Southeast. And Dax Harwood is listed as Southeast as well. That makes sense. Okay, so it's some more money. We'll go up to $13.50 a show. Okay, once more. Let's go $13.99 like I'm on The Price is Right. That's more money. Go to $14.50. See where it says ongoing versus. I mean, you could do a certain set number of months, but it just makes so much more sense to have it where you have the ongoing. But if you liked it the old way and prefer it, it's an option. And that's a good thing. Because just because I see that as a positive doesn't mean everybody will, especially people that are used to playing it the way they did in 2016. So hopefully they'll take this. I made it a little more. There we go. Off screen, I'm going to make a list of some of the wrestlers I've signed. When I was going through the dry run earlier, I lost track of how many people I had offered contracts to. That's not a good thing. Cash Wheeler, that's the name that used to be Dash Wilder. So it's similar. You know, that's. It's not a bad move, actually. Now, there is the risk that I could sign one and not get the other. But I'll take that chance. They're both excellent workers. Okay. See where it says your travel costs are covered? Because unlike Dax, Cash is based in the Southwest, the Southeast. So this isn't like Tony Schiavone driving down from Athens, Georgia to Jacksonville. So I'm going to drop down to 10 because I'm going to do that anyway. Let's take the travel costs. They'll say I want travel costs covered. See? I'll do this. I want more money. He wants a higher cut of the merchandise, but if I try going to 15 or higher, anything above 10, you already saw just a moment ago, AEW would say no. Block. Stand by. Okay, back. Didn't mean to cut out so abruptly, but an issue I had to handle. Kill a spider. Travel costs. We'll cover his travel costs from the southwest. He's gonna want more money. I think he already said he wanted more money. We'll go with $13.50. I'll probably say no. We'll bump it to $13.99. Maybe I'll take that. Maybe I want a little more. That's my guess, at least. We'll see. Ooh. I'm trying to hit the keyboard. Or space bar. I valid amount. I'm like paying them in pesos? In euros? Oh. Probably best to not have these. A space probably between the 5 and the 0. Okay, well, we can't go above 10% on the merch. So it's predicted he wanted more. We'll go $13.99. He might take this. We're paying his travel costs. No, we'll go $14.15. I think that's exactly the amount we gave to Dax Harwood. Creative control clause. Now that was something I ran into earlier. A lot of these guys would take the deal, but they wanted creative control. I looked up and down and said, do I want to give Zack Ryder creative control? Do I want to give Enzo Amore creative control? Decisions. And people dump on Enzo. I get it. There are criticisms that are valid. But I tell you what, he took some absolute garbage scripting that they forced him to say verbatim. And he got himself over in spite of the most nonsensical stuff. Now, Enzo as a wrestler, that's not his strong suit. But it didn't help at all when Ring of Honor had Big Cass and Enzo show up at Madison Square Garden and didn't smarten up New Japan. Enzo, maybe he can find something he enjoys better than wrestling. It can be quite the sordid business. Let's see. No, I would rather not. I'll pay a little more for Cash Wheeler because I didn't give Dax creative control. Let's see. We'll go with $14.30. You're lucky I'm a fan, Cash. Come on. $1,500, and if this doesn't work, I think about something else. I can't give him that though. I'm not gonna give one if I didn't give it to the other. That would be foolish. wants that creative control clause. Now, I understand after suffering through the humiliation of working for Vince McMahon, that would traumatize me to the point of wanting that as well, but maybe an extra $15 a show, 15, 30, come on, dude, please. I am curious if I were to give in on the creative control and try and dump the money back down, I hope you wouldn't then complain, you just offered me this other amount. See, I offered you that other amount without the creative control. So I'm not sure how you'd react to that. I'm not going to give creative control unless this is like high stakes, because maybe I should have signed him first. I don't know if he knows. I'm not sure if it's that deep. Ideally, you would sign them both at the same time, but it's not an option in this game. Man, it's getting expensive. Bidding against myself. 1,600, dude, come on. I might give him creative control and drop him back down because it's going to get too expensive. Alright. Do ourselves a little bit of an experiment here. Let's find out. Okay, what did you creative control? I was going to book you well anyway, Cash. Come on, buddy. We're on a handshake deal. You don't like it. It's not like you can't find work elsewhere. Every promotion from here to Tokyo. Clamoring to have y'all. Just go back and watch those American Alpha versus Revival matches in NXT. I got to see that 3 times. Incredibly lucky. Because by chance, for the 2 times in a row they came to the Nashville area, I think they were running some opposition, pretending not to run opposition against Ring of Honor. They're always suspiciously close. This is the same building, Beauty, mind you, that the Flair Steamboat Trilogy match 3 of that took place. Sadly for me, that was before I was a wrestling fan. So my buddy Josh in high school, I always had that to hang over my head. So, I get to see Flair Steamboat. I get to see, I was front row for Young Bucks versus Golden Lovers, so I can't get too sad about missing it, but that was a show the night before WWF ran the building, and they intentionally ran to like 11:45 p.m. local time. Take as long to get there as possible just to stick it to the opposition. We'll get to this in a bit, but there's the dirty tricks or dirty tactics or whatever. There's a dirty doctor who's that as well. All right. Drop down the money. We'll get the creative control. Because at some point, it was handshake anyway, so if he gets to be too much of a hassle, we'll deal. But that's one thing with this being real life people versus like in the Cornellverse or the Thunderverse. There's more of a human attachment to people that I'm a fan of in real life. They're marking out to Cash Wheeler. But I mean, if ever there were a tag team or a duo to have as a tag team in AEW in a company that's going to push tag teams like it's 1970s Crockett, I tell you, there's a market for it. All right, if he complains about that money, though, we're gonna have ourselves an issue. Well. Okay. You know what? I will give up that 1,300 plus creative to not pay upwards of 1,700, whatever it would have been. So glad there's a mute button I can hit. I had some fun live streaming Super Mega Baseball 3 on the PlayStation 4 on Twitch. But there's no cough button. There's a clicker thing on here, but it makes it like unpleasant. It's a click, you know, it's supposed to just being very smooth. And this is not to blame Sony or the headset makers or whatever, it's just inherently that's the challenge. I have something that's, at least there's this better a click than to hear me just, you know, coughing or whatever. Taking a swig of Diet Peach Tea Snapple like I'm about to. Okay. So we have Harwood and Wheeler. Drew Gulak. Of course. surprised that WWE gave him as much TV time as he got with his contract almost up. It's unusual. But I know that their available wrestlers aren't the typical full amount. Plus, they had Bryan Danielson in there. I'm sure push him, have some matches with him because Bryan knows that Gulak's talented. Anybody watched any of his stuff in Evolve, he was great there. I still think that Evolve from like 2015, 2016 has never gotten its just due for how consistently entertaining a product it was, with great matches. Think about the Eddie Dean's Ranch weekend, WrestleMania 32 in Dallas 4+ years ago. Time flies. Where Ibushi and Ospreay did the stereo moonsaults off the second floor of the Cowboy Wild West facade. It was very much a Texas thing, and yet here was this guy from the UK and this guy from Japan, two of the very best. They're right in front of me. It's like, wow. Between that and the NXT TakeOver Dallas, I had so much fun by the time WrestleMania 32 rolls around. I didn't care. It was a slog and a marathon of a show. All right, let's get Gulak. He's great lengths, but they even put forward that I might have to give him travel costs. And because of the mandate from the parent company, AEW, merchandise sales can be no more than 10% for the cut to the wrestler. 600 a pop, that's a steal. This would be like when Kyle O'Reilly was involved for a couple of months before he went to NXT. Or like Steve Austin in ECW, you knew that clock was ticking. Sid Vicious in 1994, USWA. Sid, I don't think has ever really gotten the credit either for what he deserves. I mean, look, USWA was dying by that point. I think a lot of people already knew it, but Memphis was the last of the territories. So Smoky Mountain went down, but eventually it was just too much. So the pay there, they had to be low to keep that overhead low. You're running the municipal, or not even running municipal, running the fairground sports arena. There's only so much you can charge for tickets. Alright, so we'll say 10%. He'll say no. Probably go up to $650, I guess, rather than saying yes. Oh, hey. I like add an extra zero or something, okay. That'll work. Thank you, Drew Gulak, for making that rather painless. Leo Rush. Let's see what it says about his personality. They're big on telling you somebody's sexual orientation in the game. And again, it's probably a good time to throw in the disclaimer. I did not go through and verify any of these for any of these people. This is from the Killing the Business mod. With that in mind, let's go ahead and sign Leo Rush if we can get him. That dude is super talented. He's not afraid to speak his mind when he doesn't think something is correct, which made him a tough fit for WWE because they want their compliance. So negotiate. And he'll complain about his merch, but that's hopefully I can get him by $1,350. He might want $1,400, or maybe he'll go along like Gulak. We'll see. Yeah. I'm not sure how much you can cut it as far as how many times you can offer a very small incremental pay increase. Okay, I'll try 1330. Like an AM radio station. I'm trying that out. More. Well, I can't give you above 10%, pal. I hope there's not like some point where I'll say enough. I can't. Name your prize. Come on. I'll make a bid against myself. I told you it was going to be a pain about the merch. But you know what? I think it'll be worth it. We'll see. Play this back later when he walks up before a big show or something. I regret it. Oh, dude is exciting in the ring. He can really go. I imagine he'll be anxious wherever he, hits. Whenever this madness of the pandemic ends, we'll have an opportunity to prove some people wrong, I imagine. Good grief, Leo. How much merch are you selling out here? This is launch. See, this is not like up in the air. This is here. That's the idea. And then you got AEW, and then here I'm explaining something to a computer program. It's so weird to be verbalizing things like this, because this is, I mean, you really have to for the stream, for the feed. Otherwise, I mean, if I was just sitting here and you had the Millionaire music, kind of get old fast. All right, 1440 it is. But at least it lets you know that you need to increase it or whatever, but get them to accept. It's not like you're just completely flying in the blind. All right, so I can add Leo Rush. So I've got Revival, Gulak, and Rush. Just cleaning up with these guys that got cut by WWE. ACH. Super talent. I guess you can always go back to New Japan to team up with Taguchi again. Although, I don't know. It didn't end well for him in WWE. But he doesn't have to worry about that anymore as far as dealing with them goes. That's not what I want. Oh, that's tremendous. Hatred for Shane? Why does Shane have heat on him? I get Vince. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Super 69. That was the team. Let's see if you're interested. Mid-South. Well, that's interesting. Mid-South, I guess, would be seen as adjacent to Southeast. There is some variance as far as what you might consider Mid-South or Southeast or whatever. But overall, they do a great job. I mean, from the people that designed the game to Gary, who made this wonderful mod. Okay, we have to cut to 10%, so he's going to say no. Or maybe not, we'll see. Maybe like Drew Gulak and just say, okay. $13.30. I can't give you a higher cut. They won't let me. $13.99. All right. with this page, you have to be careful what you click on. Sometimes you get stuck with it, and you can't undo it. Or at least that was my experience. I might have done something wrong, but with my limited experience, if you get to this point, you're learning the game. Tread lightly. Make sure you have things saved. So unless he is physical, I can see out injured torn bicep. Because you never really know with this game if there's a hyperlink, and sometimes you gotta click around and find out for yourself. Good buddies with Cena, huh? Hope they don't accidentally out somebody in this game that doesn't necessarily want their personal orientations out there. Personal info, we already saw that. Popularity. Nobody can do it. I just want to see them. 8 months. Oh. Well, that changes things. I can't sign a guy that's going to be out for 8 months. I mean, if this were a shoot sport, he wouldn't pass the physical. Contract offer would be nullified. I mean, I would be happy to have him come in and cut promos for 8 months, but this is something I didn't pick up on when I was going through the dry run before. As far as looking up here, saying, okay, to skills, and over here, old injuries. It keeps track of like if he messes up a move and injures someone else. That'll get you some heat. Understandably so. Okay, so sadly, Rusev, we have to leave you out there in the open market for now, pal. Barrington Hughes. We got some of the smaller guys. We'll bring in Barrington Hughes. Big man, he can go in the ring though. He's with MLW. That's where I became familiar with him. Popularity's not going to help me a whole lot, but I'm not planning on really running that far outside the southeast, at least for now. We'll see. Maybe I'll change my mind. But here's the good part: a $40 payday. I mean, that's almost feel guilty signing something like that. Almost. So as you would imagine, most popular in Mexico. But I mean, that's clicking off the categories right there, those fundamentals. And for $90 a show, now we'll have to fly him in. I imagine he's based out of Mexico. I don't know for sure, which is I'm going to look. Why I'm going to look. So Mexico is in Noreste. If I botch any of these location names, it's not intentional. No slight intended. Alright, handshake deal. We'll fly them in from Mexico, $90 a pop. Yeah, that works for me. And it doesn't it's not like we're to an awkward thing after 3 months to negotiate a new deal, give an extra like $5 per. And not having any sort of stupid guaranteed downside, which I always thought was a strange thing for a PPA to have anyway. I can understand exclusive. Now, granted, if I'm representing the talent, then yes, I want to have that in there. But I'm I'm thinking from the company's point of view here, that's what they got here to do. Signing guys fast enough, I'm forgetting to write it down. I don't want to miss anybody. All right, so take it to really at least 12 to run a proper show. We'll need more than that. We're off to a good start. So we've got offers in to the Revival / FTR, Drew Gulak, Leo Rush, ACH, Barrington Hughes, Bestia 666, Zack Ryder. A Sterling Reputation 100. I've built a bit of a respect. He would be one of my road agents. Although he would really end up in AEW. And the merch. And you know Zack Ryder loves his merch. The guy has the unreleased Greg Valentine Rhythm and Blues Hasbro figure, which might sound like absolute gibberish to somebody that didn't know, but it showed up in a Toys R Us ad, but it never was released because Rhythm and Blues ended as a tag team and Valentine went back to the blonde hair. I'm sure he wasn't thrilled about going with that dark hair after years of being a blonde. And after that, they went as far as they could just call him the Hammer. Can't help all these titles in the company, but well, you know how it is with WWF / WWE in the past. So I have to cut to 10%. That's the mandate. He's going to want a lot more, probably. Say 1350. I'll probably want closer to 14. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Always double check. Zach, I'd love to have you on the roster, but not for that much. It's a developmental territory. Okay, we'll go $13.99. Oh, that creative control clause. When I was doing the dry run, I usually just backed down and went along with it. But I worked with Cash Wheeler, who was very hesitant to sign without creative control, which in real life, that's understandable. It's insanity they had to deal with in WWE. In theory, I can drop back down to this level and get them. If it's cost prohibitive to get them without the creative control. I mean, for select talent, I don't mind giving creative control, but if half the roster has it, that's going to be disastrous. I'll go into some debt if I have to, rather than deal with that. And I'm not sure what the upper threshold is, how long a given wrestler typically will go when they're wanting to hold out for creative control. Much like real life. $13.99 was the amount he was going to take. If I gave creative $14.99. $15.49. A flat $1,600. If it's going to take more than that, we're dropping down and giving them creative. Woo, woo, woo. All right. I'll find out another time how far we got to chase. I still got more people to sign, so maybe we'll find out before this broadcast is over. You're going to get hiring vetoes. Get wage matching. Get some of that Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, WCW money. definitely make note when you're running into somebody that starts mentioning creative control. Make note of what offer you made them money-wise the first time they brought it up, and you can see how high they're willing to go. If they go beyond if you want to match and pay an extra $1,000 or whatever, then obviously that at some point you think everybody's got a prize. But if it gets to the point that it's too rich for your blood for a given wrestler or performer or whatever, worker, then you know what to go back down to the things to accept. You would give in like I did with the creative control. And that doesn't, of course, guarantee me that I'm going to get them. But typically, when they don't complain anymore, they'll take the deal. You're more often than not going to be okay. The one exception would be if they're talking actively with another company, you might run into some trouble. Leave Rusev out there. He's got injured bicep out for 8 months. I don't know if somebody's going to sign him or not, but next for this game we'll get to find out. And really, I can't call him Zack Ryder. Yeah, that's his WWE name. And the other copyright, trademark, whatever. There's alter egos. Well, that might have to change. Popularity-wise, tells me money-wise, $60 a show. That's a no-brainer. Got to get some of those lower-end, money-wise wrestlers on board that can still work a decent match. And who knows? Maybe we'll get over big and find ourselves as stars. Nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing. Great Lakes, which I only make note of because the travel costs are not covered. With a 60, why not? Oh, what did I hit here? What's a finite amount of time, I'm guessing. Okay. 9 months. Should have read that clear the first time. So this would be an example of where you would use the format that the game had in 2016 and 2013 and earlier. So 9 months is it. Get that price, and without having to do any sort of downside guarantee. Bring him in. Have to put some guys over. And go on to the next territory. So is this a real person? I mean, it's a playoff Shinsuke Nakamura, it sounds like, but it's not like they have fake names in here, or close to fake names. I mean, he's certainly younger. 35 is not. Nakamura is. Shinsuke. Of course, here I'm exposing areas of weakness in my knowledge of pro wrestling, where certain wrestlers and companies are. Grand scheme of things. Let's see if we got title history now. No. For your employment history. It's kind of weird. see how that goes.
Other than if I book him, it's $1,300. He's gonna want a lot more because it's Enzo, sure, 10%. He'll not 5. He'll balk at 10, but he'll want more money. We'll bid him up a bit and see. Unlike creative control, I can't just decide to overrule the parent company at some point because that's something that's a directive from AEW from a game standpoint. It's gonna probably cost me a bit, but let's find out just how much it would be and then go from there, shall we? Let's go $13.99. $14.15. Like I said, not surprised, which is, you know what, that seems more realistic to that, and that's a good thing. You know, it makes for perhaps frustrating negotiations and stuff like this. But dude, I can't give any more than that. I mean, as far as the merch. $14.99. Oh, creative. Should I give Enzo creative control? Did so when I went through the dry run to sign him, but I don't know if I want to do that. That popularity. I like that I can just click on skills. It takes me right to it. That's a good thing. The problem, you look at the basics, but you're not hiring Enzo because of his in-ring. You're hiring him because he's so strong on the microphone. It's quite the range there for color commentary. I would not hire him as that color commentator. No offense to the guy, but I need somebody that's going to be more of a Bob Caudle kind of role, if I can help it. Alright, well, if I don't sign Enzo, that makes me not feel like I feel obligated to hire Big Cass, Colin Cassidy. But I'm curious how much you come in for. Imagine he's not going to be happy about a 10% either. We'll see. Curious if we reach his pay-per-show level, and he'll then want to demand creative control like Enzo did. I can bring him in if it doesn't work out. It's a handshake deal. We're done. No downside guarantee. No awkward sticking around for 6 months. The game telling me every single day that a certain person has low morale. Of course, the deal isn't signed. I can always have a change of heart, but I need some talent to come in initially.
Annoys Jose. Let's see. Oh, super cheap. We'll pass that up. Southwest. It's $80 a show. We'll see what happens if I say no, but I imagine he'll insist on it. Yeah. It really should. Alright. It's $80. You know, it's not like it's $1,500 plus the plane ticket. As it is, I had this set up to cover the transport and the hotels for the talent, and then treat them like actually are stars. As I noted before, it lets you know if you're already in negotiations with somebody up there. It'd be nice if there'd be some way to tell on the main screen that it's not that difficult to click on somebody. There's your answer. There's your answer. Now that's interesting. Is Grado too good for launch wrestling? Let's see what happens. I don't remember seeing him when I went through the dry run before, but he might have been lost in the wall of names. Oh. So it's good enough for the Revival. And Gulak and Leo Rush and Zack Ryder's not good enough for Grado. It is very nice though, it shows you over here on the employment how much somebody's gonna want for a given show. Jesse Goddard has a surprisingly good drop kick. It's funny because he was on the show Big Brother when I don't really watch that show as much anymore, but I used to watch it a bunch. My brother was a semi-finalist to be on Big Brother 6, which is like one of the all-time great seasons. You can only imagine if they would have had him and my buddy Dustin, or his buddy Dustin, he's my friend too. But at the same time, it's sometimes fame without the money's not the best thing. Plus, like he put, he said it would have been cool to be a finalist, actually go out to LA and all that, but he was able to play the NCAA football game back when they still made that wonderful game. Yeah, I'm gonna enjoy his summer instead, so it worked out. Anyway, points, he was on the show later and became a pro wrestler. He was at Impact at a time that company creatively was kind of in the doldrums. And it's not Jesse's fault. We have Jesse versus Luchasaurus. Luchasaurus Austin was on Big Brother, I think, 17. Anyway. Start talking about past seasons of Big Brother like it's Dave Meltzer and Garrett on the Wrestling Observer radio show talking about Beverly Hills 90210, the reboot of that. You will get a strong pop a lot of times from nostalgia, but that is very much a limited thing. The law of diminishing returns kicks in very quickly, and the more you go to it, the less effect it has. Which is why for WWE, which has intentionally undermined as many people as possible to keep truly becoming stars. Basically all you had left were the people that were grandfathered in that were already stars before the books were closed, so to speak. Or at least that's my take on it. I'm not up there, I don't know for sure, but
Okay, let's see. Jesse, negotiate. 600, that's fine. Although he's going to want more, so I'll take that merch money. Where's he flying in from? Northwest? Yeah. I'll pay his travel costs. That's fine. Oh, he'll take it. Sometimes it works out like that. What if Kenny Doan had gotten stuck with that awful cheerleader gimmick? That was a time when I wasn't watching much wrestling of any kind, but WWE included the group. Within the group was the wrestler who became known as Dolph Ziggler, of course. I guess in real life, he's now 34 years old. He must have been pretty young when he got that chance. That was a long time ago. In some ways, although. It's weird. The older I get, the more it feels like time moves faster. And, like, the year 2000 does not feel like 20 years ago. To me, but you blink and here we are. All right, so it's helpful to know you have $90 a show. You're in the bargain bin, guys, but he's got talent. New England. Okay, we'll fly, man. $90 a show. Yeah, we can handle the airfare, Kenny. I presume he's not like a on hiatus guy. Although I don't think it would have allowed me to reach this point if he were. Chat and be a little bit creative here as far as the offers made so far. Now this won't show up later on the YouTube videos. So that's just recording locally. There's the offers made to talent, but there's really talent that has received an offer. Dax Harwood, Cash Wheeler, Drew Gulak, Leo Rush, ACH, Barrington Hughes, Bestia 666, Zack Ryder, Shinsuke Nakamura, Big Cass, No Way Jose, Jesse Godderz, and Kenny Doan. And then dot because I'm not done. Right now I've got 13 offers out. And nothing binding until I agree to it, if and when. Or any more than that. I started with a search at 30. I had to a few, so I went to 35. Give that young talent as much as possible, knowing that some guys inevitably fall through the cracks. In real life, if I were booking someone like James Ellsworth, I would want to be sure that AEW had a specific plan for him, because he's played so much for comedy in WWE. This guy that made the most of his opportunity, brought in his enhancement talent, managed to have a nice run there for a while. One byproduct of games like this, Fire Pro Wrestling World as well, is that I've learned more about wrestlers that maybe I've only seen their name in passing in results listed in the Wrestling Observer newsletter or somewhere else online. It's like education.
wanted a 15% on the merch. He's flying in from New England, pay his freight. $200 a show. I mean, it's not like it's, if he wants double that, he would cry over it. So one more merch, or for the merch, which is fine. Ooh, 222. And he took it. So Christian Casanova. There is some unknown for me with this as far as how many wrestlers I'm signing, how many, and how more as far as AEW's expectations and wants go. And Cody Hall, let's see how they have as far as his skills, because that's, he was with New Japan for a while, and then he'd get hurt. He was elsewhere. I don't know if it was Noah, Pro Wrestling Noah, if that's where it was. But there was another company in Japan, though, he was with for a time. But you know what the deciding factor is? I get it for $40 a show. Of course. I mean, if you get sick of being there after 3 months, you can move on. It's a handshake deal. Oh, if you're flying out of Japan, yeah, I'm gonna have to pay for that if I'm gonna get for that $40. This is like if you see something on a website like Amazon or something similar, it's like $40. And it looks like it's a great deal. And then you find out the shipping is from like international, you gotta pay some exorbitant amount. Although, you know, over time, these companies have, these are very, you know, strong companies for a reason, because their management knows how to act and react to market challenges. If people go to your website, you feel like it's almost like a bait and switch. You're getting your hopes, you know, brought up in the dash for no good reason. It doesn't help the company that, you know, one of the big companies that you found that third-party provider through. Alright. Okay, we'll cover them. And the thing is, if it turns out that Cody Hall's not a good fit, then we'll just stop using him. There's no downside guarantee. Or any travel costs if we're not having him travel. Cody Hall is Scott Hall's son. I tend to think of that as common knowledge, but I know that many people watching that aren't necessarily as familiar. That's Zack Ryder. I have an offer out to Zack Ryder. Let's look at the skills. That's a lot stronger than I thought they'd have him. Look at that popularity. We'll see what he wants. 10%. Tri-state. Something in the Northeast, New York, Philly, that area. So, yeah, we'll fly him in. He's going to want more than the 1,200. He's got to come down to 10%. That's the rule. So the parent company, it's the only thing that AEW thus far in this game has done to say, no. Say 1,300 and see what he says. $1,350. The music reset. Jump there. $13.99. Hey. So no creative control clause requested. $13.99. You saw that high popularity. So yeah, Walker Hawkins. It's the $90 a show. One in Ontario is the same as he'd be popularity-wise anyway here in the USA. All right, we can negotiate. Tri-State's gonna want his. I mean, it's $90 to book him. I mean, some guys are gonna have to go over, and some guys are gonna have to do some jobs. That's just how it is. Unless you're a company that is intentionally trying to undermine your own talent. So it's 50-50. The 500 club. As in, like a 500 batting average in baseball. All right, so we've offered for Facade. $30 a show. But that's not what I'm looking for. It's kind of weird to have a giant as an enhancement guy anyway, but I mean, if it's selling's not any good. I mean, if you had a big man that could sell believably, kind of like Lance Archer. Watch Lance Archer. He's in there with the smaller wrestlers. I saw it in person last year when New Japan ran Nashville, and they had the visa issues, and they had borrowed some guys from Ring of Honor, so they had a tag match with Lance Archer, Shane Taylor on one side, because Davey Boy Smith Jr. was working the MLW show that night, and then it was Jonathan Gresham and Cole Cabana on the other side. Jonathan Gresham is not very big, super talented, a lot of talent, but Lance Archer and him was definitely like that mismatch. But Archer was skilled enough, and Gresham as well, but Archer skilled enough to be able to sell enough to a much smaller opponent in a way that didn't make himself look stupid or make it look contrived or just phony, which is not easy to do. On Josh. I'm trying to fly in L.A. Park Jr. from Mexico. Leo Bryan. Let's see. Now for Flyman, $90 a show. The 10%. Let's do it. So Leo Bryan. Spelled B-R-I-E-N. Expand the search range up to 40. That's going to put some interesting names on the board here.
thought I remembered before the dry run through those. No go. $80 a show. Not the Midwest. I'm going to look at it and think it's Austin Aries for a split second. Clearly it's not. Aries. $80 a show. It's Midwest, so I don't know if there'll be travel expenses that I'll have to cover. Let's see. And to me, that's an important aspect of this game, is making sure you've got guys in there that can do some jobs that are also going to be able to do it effectively. The selling looked to be strong. He's 40s, that's the upper end of it. But when you have some younger wrestlers in there, you're going to help all of them out by having some veterans, because inevitably they'll learn one way or another. And the idea for me with this is setting it up where you're going to have a lot of like house show matches, just because you're trying to get reps for these people, especially the younger wrestlers on the road. The kind of things that you can only learn and truly pick up in live matches. I'm not saying that from personal experience. I've never been a pro wrestler. There's no way. I have like plenty of reasons I can name. Starting with my neck. I have problems with that as is. Years and years you've got to put in, driving 8 hours each way for some, tiny payoff if you did that. Hot dog and a cup of soda. People that are willing to do that for years, not knowing that it'll ever pay off. Anyway, on that happy note, let's offer $80 a shot. So, Eris we have. Cain Velasquez. I don't think I saw him the last time through on this. Chris Hero, I remember, but I don't think I spent that long on it once I got to this point. So, yeah, Cain's a no-brainer, and he will negotiate. Gotta go to 10%. Flown in from Southwest. I'm gonna fly him in, that's fine. This Cain Velasquez will be doing alright. He's gonna want more than 1,200. Probably have to be closer to 1,400. No at 1,250. Everybody say no at 1,300. It might go 1,350. 13.99. There we go. Be careful of the box. If I go too low with it, it disappears off the screen that's visible to you. So I looked over my television to the side where I've got this streaming so I can keep it tabs on it. 'Cause I can't have like the preview window open without it distractingly close to the actual window itself. They're actually overlapping it, and I can't. I tried using a script to keep this particular screen or this window on top at all times, but it caused me some considerable problems that plagued episode number 1 of this. Chris Hero, of course. Such a wasted talent, WWE and NXT. He's got some great merch too, at least he did before. So, I met him in Dallas. I bought a t-shirt from him. And he's being a salesman, of course, so he's friendly, I'm sure, with everybody. But he was real cool. I interrupted a conversation he was having to buy a shirt. I just felt bad about it. I felt bad for Tommy End, now known as Aleister Black. He thought I was wanting to buy one of his shirts, and I didn't know what the protocol was for that. I've gone to plenty of wrestling shows, but this was that weekend in particular. Like, there's so many stars people that become stars now. The wrestlers at least well known. Like the photo I got with Zack Sabre Jr. Just like in the background, you got Ricochet, all casual, like just holding this IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship belt. I was surprised they let him bring it to the show, but that was slightly before things really changed as far as with what a lot of companies did. So he'll probably say no. He's going to want closer to 14, maybe above 14. One of the best strikers in the business, and it's, to me, a brainer. So as expected, he wants higher pay since I had to cut the merch to 10%. $13.99. That'll work. Very good. Chad, the last name I noted was Kenny Doan. I'll add to that Christian Casanova, Cody Hall, Kurt Hawkins, Facade, Leo Bryan, Harris, Cain Velasquez, and Chris Hero. And again, these are simply offers that were made. Nothing that's been agreed to yet, but typically, your offers where they'll only not complain about the money being too low or whatever, which is how the game lets you know, okay, just spend a little more here or not a problem. Or sometimes you just get lucky, look at the draw as far as if they'll take that lower amount of money. But that's like real life. To that end, it's definitely a plus. Selling's not bad. $60 a show. I can just look on this screen. I should remember this for future purposes. Based in the Southeast, we probably won't demand transport. Dude, you're making $60 a show. You get all indignant about it. Okay. I mean, it's not gonna have to pay him anything if I never book him. So we got Chris Melendez to the list. On hiatus. $600 a pop to book Epico Cologne. At the 40s there. A known commodity. Look at the skills. And we're gonna need some tag teams, especially since I'm not bringing in Enzo and Big Cass, at least not out of the gate.
space bar and do both as far as the negotiations. That's not how it works. Or shift, not the space bar. Actually, I did hit shift there just to see if it might. I'm still learning with this game, you know. It's as much as there are similarities to 2016, there have been plenty of things to learn. But the more I play, the more I enjoy it. That seems to bode well for the future. So if you bought it, you're like on the fence, like, perhaps give it a bit more time and see if you still feel the same after that. So if you wanted 20% on the merch, from Puerto Rico, so that'd be perhaps a little more expensive. He's gonna want more than 600. He'll probably get 700, give or take. Maybe not. Maybe we'll go with. See, you never know for sure. So Epico alone. Let's see what Primo has to say. Hey. Works for me. Send them out for both. See, I don't. Oh yeah. Okay. Unwilling or unable to negotiate. Life, that whole situation, Drake Maverick being announced in the tournament for the interim Cruiserweight Championship, and they kept this amazing real life. If it wasn't real, and just putting on an act, he did an Oscar-worthy performance. It's legitimate from the heart, which is nothing you get out of much at all with WWE in 2020, which is by design. But in this case, because they already announced it for the tournament, they kept him in it. Hey, maybe it'll turn around and this would be the best thing that could have happened for him. We'll see. But he's not going to negotiate with me anyway, so I can't think about it for too long. No real use. Ascension as a team, just because of how poorly they are presented on main roster television. Remember, the Ascension was one day shy of having the NXT Tag Team Championship for a full year, 364 days. They get brought up to the main roster immediately in this weird thing where they were trying to compare themselves or be compared to teams like the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, Demolition, Powers of Pain, etc. And then they were made to look like geeks, and then the veteran teams of years past they brought back just to humiliate them for no good reason. I mean, that is another very clear example when you want to look at how the developmental system for WWE and the Performance Center and NXT, the absolute disconnect between that and the main roster. The creative process is broken.
bucks. In these handshake deals, it's easy enough to get out of if either side is unhappy. They'll probably want more than the 600. At some point, I have to be careful not to just offer too many. Go through here, make sure I'm not missing anyone. Yes, saw Fred Yehai. Definitely bringing in Yehai. When I played Fire Promoter mode, I went through several years of that game time wise in Fire Pro Wrestling World. That was really my first foray into live streaming on Twitch. Stamina. And $60 a pop. That's just way too low, really. So cover his travel costs. If it's 60, he'll get them. It's because my promotion has just started. It has no reps so far, even though it's a child promotion to All Elite Wrestling. I think with all that, $60 feels low, but if that's what he's in, we are covering the travel costs. But still, Yehai really should be above that. There we go. Everybody cuts their own deal, brother. I've heard the name Howl Wicked, but I don't know that much about him. Fundamentals are strong. $100 a show. So if the flyman from Tri-State, that's $100 per shot. I wonder if at some point AEW is going to say, hey, stop signing guys, because this is all being paid for by them. I mean, for $100, it's... I mean, it's 20s there, but I'm not bringing them into the spotlight talent. Slater, I've got to bring him in. It's interesting to see him at 36 years old, because he was in WWE for so long. I have the feeling the right system in real life, if the right opportunity comes along, he could really break out and be something. I mean, I'm not saying like, main event WrestleMania level or anything, but on occasions, he had a lot of ideas and things that just heard no a lot by WWE, although he's hardly the only person with that complaint. 1,300, but that popularity is going to be 55. Canada, it's British Isles, maybe some TV clearance over there. I got kids shirt. He might not be too keen on the 10% as opposed to 25. So complain about that, I'm sure. Boost the pay up probably with 100. Well, he wanted 25, so it may take more than that. 1350.
I would not have guessed that Joe Hennig, formerly known as Michael McGillicuddy and later Curtis Axel in WWE, son of Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, he's 40. Yeah, this is a giant that doesn't sell very much. Just why double check. Of course, I'm going to go for Carl Anderson, try and bring him in. If we'll go for it. Big time. I'll show you if you're already in negotiations with somebody there at the top. Max Starter. The upper edge as far as selling goes. $90. No guaranteed downside. 10% merch right off the bat. Travel costs. Southeast, so this should be a no, and then hopefully I'll take it. Again, you have to bring in some guys that are going to serve as an enhancement talent. And if they get over big, then we adjust and go with that. It's got the popularity. Is that true in real life that Mike Bennett has a strong friendship with Kevin Kelly? I mean, I'd believe it. I know they both in Ring of Honor for a long time. Both those New Japan connections. But I don't know definitively. I think I'll leave him out there for now. There we go. Curious about Seidel because his brother's one who's more well known, perhaps. Those fundamentals, that's a nice thing to have there. Stamina. There's this. But he's a high flyer. $40 a show. I mean, that. When I'm running these, when I plan to run these house shows, get reps in for the wrestlers, they're going to have some people to work with them then. Do the honors and at the same time possibly help them to learn things. What do you offer the colognes?
super jacked though. It's no doubt about the physique. With the unwilling and unable. Oh, we have a whole thing with Rusev and the torn bicep. Dry run through the first time around, I was able to sign him, but that might not be the case. That could be my imagination. It really doesn't matter since he's not going to sign with us anyway. Ryback's a no. Year pro. So he broke it when he was 15. That did not exactly require some complicated math. Popularity. Shannon Moore. Between WWE and TNA. It's a known commodity. He'll say no, probably. Maybe not. Okay. So he's not going to work house shows. That's fine. I'm not even sure offhand how the scheduling is going to work with the house shows. How complicated or not complicated it is. Offer to Shannon Moore. Is that the guy who's Pineapple Pete? I think so. I like with this color display here that I'm not sure if I can pull up this part anyway, but that red jumps out at you in a good way. You don't waste your time unwilling or unable to negotiate. Teddy Hart can't because he's in the clink. It's pretty solid there for Trip Cassidy. $90 a pop. As I recall, I signed Trip Cassidy on the dry run. I can see why. So we have to pay travel costs, $90 per that. That works for me. Show's over. I just don't think it's not quite what I'm looking for, especially for $1,300 a pop. Wes Briscoe for $40 a pop. the UK for like what, a $30 payday. He has like almost no popularity. He's got the number one for Southeast, and that's it for the United States. Wouldn't mind booking him if I were to run the British Isles, but that's really not the objective of the company. Okay, so for now at least, we'll go with that. I guess that saved it. I thought it might have a little box that would pop up or something, but no. Hire some road agents. We'll need to hire a color commentator. I'm doing play-by-play. Intention to view to hire. You want to have the status on any, because otherwise you'd be looking for an active wrestler who can also do color commentary. I'm less concerned about where he's based at. It could be he or she. If the best color commentator out there is a woman, I'll want her on my staff. Aiden English was out there in the open market. Maybe it's because that's listed as a color commentator, which he was. Let's see. Popularity. Oh, it says retired. Okay. I'll overlook that part first. It's quite the range there, 29 to 74. Put a minimum of 50 on the color commentator. What that brings me. Do 70. This will show me like the range. That's the problem. Cautious with that. Lenny Leonard does a great job on play-by-play.
might be the most underrated broadcaster in all of pro wrestling. It's too bad that a lot of fans never have heard him call some of those Evolve shows from 2015 and 2016 by himself. I've done broadcasts by myself before, entire baseball games, entire football games, and as tough as that is, the demands of a pro wrestling broadcaster have a lot of unique elements. I know Lenny's mentioned before, he said he doesn't have the best memory, but he preps like crazy, and it shows because he's able to bring in relevant information and facts that fit within the context of the match. They're interesting. But with me serving as play-by-play already for my company, he's the same for color and announcing. Although, you know, in real life, if I were doing this, I would have, if I were to bring in Lenny, I would let him do the play-by-play. I do color. But looking back, let's actually look at Josh Barnett. So a little more for Barnett. Where's his? Like I kind of jobbed out there on the color. Interesting, but today doesn't list him as no longer in the business. He's really stayed away since his run with TNA Impact ended. $400 for 69/77. No way. If I can get the 80 version, I'm sure. But 35 to 80, forbid it. Same deal. Only higher up. He's not going to slum it with us. And to think, we've offered his son a contract. He's on hiatus, so it doesn't really matter. Really? Does he announce shirtless? Does that affect his color? If he puts a shirt on, does it drop? So it'd be either Tenay or Lenny Leonard, since Josh Barnett. That low end at 51. Whereas with Lenny, even though he's normally a play-by-play guy, you think, oh, but he's listed here identically. So the difference between having a 68, like worst case scenario with Lenny versus with Josh Barnett, where he's down to a 51, it doesn't make sense to do it that way. As far as Mike Tenay goes, held it for 400 a show, 69/77. Lenny Leonard, 400 a show. The difference, he lives in Florida. But this is based in Tri-State. Today is, I think, out in Vegas. Southwest. There's an added value with Lenny Leonard that if I needed someone to do play-by-play on perhaps the secondary show or somebody be my backup with me as the player avatar. I set to be adept at doing play-by-play. I put myself over a little bit. So we'll fly him in. I'll probably say 400 is fine. I could have tried to go down a little bit on the money, but I feel better about it that way. Okay, so that gives us Lenny Leonard, at least in the queue. Referees. And again, male or female, doesn't matter to me. I just want the best person. Best referee I can get. So, a sliding scale as far as what their contractual demands might be. What? This is a better choice for this one, for any. I don't see anything that would allow me to narrow it down as far as like, would they agree to sign with you? Although I suppose once that pops up, they'll be within that right side on a person-by-person basis. Okay, I've overlooked. Can work in USA right below the referee. Okay, let's search. Sinclair's been doing ref work for a long time. And when Ring of Honor ran Nashville the first time ever in December of 2008, he was a ref on that show. Tri-State, yeah, that's fine. Now, we'll have to be careful not to run anything heads up with Ring of Honor if I can help it, since the way it works in this game, or at least in previous iterations of this game that I played, is that if you're heads up with somebody that you've got under a non-contract, handshake or whatever, but the company that he's also working with is larger than you and running that night, it would mean Todd's for the larger company, which in this case would be Ring of Honor. Not the end of the world, but if I only have, it's not like the referee bed here is exactly overflowing. I mean, I'm not going to bring in Gary Bischoff to be a referee between 20 and 50, since that was like a kind of a gimmick thing or whatever. Part of that large swath of TNA Impact that I was just checked out from pro wrestling to a large degree. A lot of that. Although I was at Lockdown 2012 at Municipal Auditorium in Nashville. My brother and I went to that show. I think he was in one of those cage matches. And I tell you, the novelty wears off rather quickly as far as the cage goes. But you probably knew that already. I think I'm overlooking something. Referee, can work USA. Let's see, maybe if I back out to here. to go to X out the window, but that would actually ask me if I wanted to X out of the program, which is not what we're going to do here at the moment. Of course, to keep an eye on with Sharp, I've just let them be. I didn't play as them initially to set them up with anybody or to have them hire anyone. And I'm curious how the computer's going to handle that, the AI. Wrestling schools, dojos, things of that nature. And back to the, no, I'm not trying to get the title history of Garrett Bischoff. Written for Scott Armstrong. I was also going to get a road agent. Previous version in 2016, it was based on two things: respect and reputation. I think that's what it was. Plenty of choices from the initial list for road agent to hire. I wonder if I could bribe Jushin Liger to come out of retirement. Yeah, it's not gonna happen. Lisa Marie Varon, that's who I was going to have initially run the women's feeder promotion for AEW. That didn't quite work right for what I was trying to get it to do, so maybe she'll end up there. That will be up to the computer. There's the willing to negotiate bar. Reputation and skill. Showing me Petey Williams if he's under a written contract. Did I turn that part of it off? I have him there to hire. Unless his contract's about to run out with Impact in the game. I know that's not true. He says 1 year, 5 months. This has potential. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat? Yeah. Our road agent won 25% because of the lower merch sales. Oh, hey, TW fan. Oh, that's right. The exclusive written. Good call. I forgot about that part, yeah, because it's something that's new, and that's a good thing as far as the 2020 version versus 2016. That's why it would show up. That makes perfect sense. Thank you. All right. Now, AEW will not allow me to go above 10%. He's going to want more money, probably. But I get him for 500. Oh, sometimes it works out. I guess he wasn't anticipating too much of that merch money as a road agent. More than just Ricky Steamboat. Yeah, I've experienced the same thing, the learning curve. I almost feel bad in my first two videos from the Blue Place TW 2020 game. It was me going through, and I was just like, well, let everybody see it the way I am first, straight out of the box. And because I hadn't gone through the learning curve yet, I was verbalizing everything I'm doing, which is unusual for me for playing a game like this, but kind of a necessity when it comes to live streaming. But the more I play it, the more I like it. And that continues to be the case with this. It's a good thing. Scott Demore. And that's a good call what you're saying about the exclusive versus the regular written. Like it's the franchise tag in the NFL. For $30 a show? Yeah. Dude, come on. Or $40. Flying out of Canada, so there's some expense there, but come on, it's $40 a show. That I've got Steamboat and Scott Demore with offers. Got a lot of contract offers now. Or handshake offers really wasn't anything. Actually, now that I think about it, it's all like handshake deals. Overvaluing the booking reputation, booking skill. Maybe I am. There's a respect and reputation. Okay, then you're double back on this. That's really what I was thinking. Okay, well, let's take a look at who I got offered. Okay, well, Scott Demore's good in that category. I'm sure Steamboat would be good as well. 100. That works for me. It's a negative flip into a positive real fast. Slaughter 240 a show. I'm not going to put him out there. He's 71 years old. For 240 a show, because he's mid-Atlantic. Slowly getting used to not having to click through on as many boxes, which is part of the appeal of this wider frame. I guess the dimensions are wider. My monitor's a bit wider than your standard. It's like literally as big as I get to fit in the area in the bookshelf. Triple check when I was measuring, but I do not want to get this maybe like just barely too big to fit. Problem. Go DiBiase. Go Dr. Tom Pritchard. stars, and some of them just don't want to do that. Where's Truth Martini been? Like, he was showing up in New Japan with their connection with Ring of Honor with him and Jay Lethal. He got to hang out with Los Ingobernables de Japón there for a little while. With Naito doing his eye pose to read the book. My description doesn't know justice. Okay, respect's a bit low. I mean, the price is right, but that's not what I'm looking for here. It's 100. He's in the southeast, so he probably won't demand transport. The dreaded merch sales. So not a little bit more. Yeah, Truth, he kind of just disappeared. I don't know. I haven't heard anything bad. It's just he's been, I don't know. It's tough though. It's tough for people that are in that manager role. Limited number of spots, and as far as upward mobility and opportunities to become a larger star, because of the way that WWE is so influential, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, including this one. WWE tend to think that managers are passé. When really, you get a good manager, you get really fired up and really angry. But just because they don't see it that way doesn't mean that other companies have to fall in line with that. If anything, that's a reason to have a competitor go the other way with it. Look what AEW's doing with Jake Roberts and Lance Archer. It's making for some captivating television. Oh, he had a birthday, huh? This was 45. 22 years in the biz is a long time. A lot of miles, a lot of bumps. Started this and doubled back. So we'll see if DiBiase will take the 10% if he wants a bit more cash. Oh, we'll take it. Okay. So with Steamboat, Scott D'Amore, Ted DiBiase, should be good as far as road agents go. Playing with referees. I don't know if I did something to make him not show up as far as one of the categories. I guess I can always reset it, that way I'll know for sure. And that's a little thing that is a lot more intuitive than the system was before, but it's just going to take a little bit of getting used to just having it there and now. As an option, it doesn't require me to do like a 4-box jump to get to the screen with the information I need. And I can appreciate that. Yeah, Heenan, it was so effective. You could bring in anybody. You know, it was the big guy of the month to come in to get built up on TV for a few weeks and then put over Hogan on the house show loop. And with Heenan, it was that ongoing thing with him and Hogan going back to the AWA. As far as where they might have their paths cross. But particularly WWF. But him as a manager, you can have somebody that is incredible in the ring. Just go. And they got the look. But on the microphone, they're just average. And to have somebody like that, in turn, have a spokesperson who's awesome with a microphone. Even somebody like that can't take any bumps anymore. You know, it was like Jake Roberts and Arn Anderson on Dynamite last night. It's interesting they never had a singles match or match of any sort aside from the '89 Rumble match, and Jake was up before Arn even got in. But I put some thought into it. Arn Anderson worked very few singles matches during his time with the Brainbusters in the WWF. He put over Tom McGee, the infamous Tom McGee, by countout over in Europe, or it aired over in Europe. I'm not sure. It was probably was taped here, USA style, not Nashville. But I think that's the only singles match I've seen listed. It would have been something to have Jake Roberts against Arn Anderson. I thought at some point maybe the paths might have crossed, but in WCW, Jake worked as a heel. Arn had his moments as a face, but the bulk of his career, the big part especially, was as a heel who could really talk and then go in the ring. CM Punk would be an interesting one. Dude's phenomenal on the stick. Capture your attention. And I think he's smart enough to know how to get over other people. And that's not always the easiest thing. And that goes to his broadcasting as well. I mean, you look at his color commentary. I mean, really, if I were to have my pick of people to bring into this developmental company, I don't think it would be one that has a budget for what Punk would want. But in the right system, the opportunity to get on the microphone and his magic, I would need to feel like something that was an authentic thing. The more real life authenticity, something that Punk legit respects and thinks is going to do great, the better. But I say all that with a caveat that if Punk doesn't want to do it, I hope he doesn't just for the sake of him having something else to do. Because I don't think that would go well. He would get frustrated very quickly. And it would have been interesting to hear Punk in AEW, but it does not seem to be something that's going to happen. Never say never. Although at this point for Punk, if he's doing okay and he's happy, as much as people would love to see him back in wrestling, it would be a disappointment for him to come back and then trash talk everybody involved because him not being happy with it. I'm not saying that that would happen necessarily, but that would be a consideration. But in the right system, yeah, he would be a hell of a manager. I think that's as close to a certainty as you're going to get. Okay, if I got the refs, I don't know what I had. Something had to be off before as far as. Let me make sure they can work at the USA, because that won't cut the list. The available to hire. Before, but this list, there's still a lot of wrestlers that or refs that didn't show before. Let's see. I'm just overlooking where it says referee. because you can't pin somebody down to a given number that easily in real life. And with some, you may not know that high ceiling potential, like I'm talking about in the NFL draft. $50 a show. And that's nice with the handshake. If it ends up being towards the low side or ends up causing problems with the matches, then we'll just not bring him back. Have to bring him in from Southwest, which is fine. Separate list on my notepad. I know there's a notepad feature within the game, but I have my way of doing things. Breath. People that I've offered, so nobody is signed yet because it's the first day. Yeah, Brian Myers, road agent. I can see that. Off. It was like with Aiden English, how it had him as a retired wrestler. That's more like it. 74 to 82 for Southwest. I gotta fly him in, but it's not international like I thought it was gonna be. So we'll do that. 10%, 220, which for a referee with a floor of 74, that's as low as it gets. Sounds good to me. $80 a show. And he's what? 37? Working as a feeder for AEW, so I'll have to anything too crazy as far as the lineup goes. Payroll within reason so that I don't get any heat from the office out of Jacksonville. Justin King. Pass on Kevin Keenan. $80 a pop, or yeah, $80 a pop for Mickey Henson, 64 to 72 range, sure. Particularly if I end up running as many house shows as I'm hoping to, it'd be wise to have perhaps more than you would typically think as far as referees available. Especially if they're going to do it for $80 a show. I was going to want a higher rate. It's not. It's a steal right there. Unless he's like a double agent's going to stooge me off to WWE, which I don't think he'll do. I'm hoping he can handle the merch sales and get cut to 10%. Yeah, Mike Kyoto action figures. Lakes, but he's not demanding travel, which works for me. Was not expecting him to put himself over like that. That's fine. We'll see if he'll go for 145 a show. Should be good with referees, but we'll look. It's not bad. Rick Manning. And not as much for smoke. So we've got offers up for Jerry Marcus, Todd Sinclair, Justin King, Mickey Henson, and Mike Chioda. That's 5. So we'll hold off for now with Rick. Okay. Oh, did I mess this up? It says we're searching for a new owner. Well, don't tell me I messed this up after all this. Alright, that's... I'm sure I can make a workaround happen if that was, in fact, what I did. I would essentially start with a second. What was that about Corderas? Well, yeah, of course they're my parent company. Now that I think about it, because they were saying the whole thing. Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Sorry. TEW 2020 paranoia kicked in. Why did I say I'm searching for a new owner? I mean, I know it's the first day, so maybe that's got a complete middle. Or maybe not, I don't know. I sent Jim a contract. Maybe so. Let me look what I did. It was a handshake. You may be right, though. I don't know. I mean, if I did, that's fine. It's just, I was thinking because the way right now my company is seen, it's big red there for the 5,000 in debt because I improved the video quality because the market demanded it. Yeah, launcher owned by AEW. That I've got covered. In a real pinch, I've got Lenny Leonard working color. He can do play-by-play if my voice goes out or whatever. Find somebody else to sit in on. Or Lenny can do it by himself. He's that good. See, right now we're rated as being insignificant. Double check with the events. Yeah. So nothing is slated. And this is really a silly way to have the events all jumbled together like it's the early days of TNA. Because I'm planning on running a house show loop or whatever. It's possible that I actually didn't send her the offer. It would not be the first time I made that mistake. Well, I thought it said that I had, but I went for negotiate. Alright, negotiations. So I guess I put through a second one. That was a handshake. Best I can tell. I'm gonna go ahead and advance today. I like all the information there. Various categories. It's more just a random comment about some random wrestler you're not going to be able to book because they're not working in the U.S. right now or whatever. Oh, that sounds riveting. I said it with sarcasm. Does anybody get a bigger pass of their matches than Bray Wyatt? Wrestling Observer Newsletter worst match of the year, 3 of the last 6 years, including 2 of the last 3. I sat in person, I sat through that awful match he had with Randy Orton at WrestleMania 33 in Orlando. That one worst match of the year, the rematch was actually worse, but it was just the egregiousness of the WWE World Championship match with overhead projections onto the ring of worms, whatever disgusting thing they want to throw up there to make me question why I spent so much money to get down there for the weekend to sit through that. Although what I saw before that with the indie shows and NXT Orlando, what made up for it. You know what, that's probably a good idea with the schedule, just leave it empty. I wasn't sure if it was gonna like squawk at me if I did that. I'm not obligated to book anything. Your call. What is this? Drama. Will Ospreay, Nick Jackson. All right, loggerheads. Social media exchanges. That's when the Young Bucks decided to disappear from Twitter. I can't say I blame them. Social media can be very effective when you use it as a one-way communication device, like how Moxley does it. And it can be great as a way as two-way communication as well. It's just knowing how people can be. Most people, the best bet is to use it to get themselves and their brand and their company and whatever their projects are, all that over, as opposed to arguing with somebody with like 5 followers that just signed up the day before. Hey, you know how to change the theme? Because I know like it seemed like it was just kind of randomly picking it before. I'm Cultaholic here. Although I'm not sure if this is something that's where I would change it on this part, because that may have been the Killing the Business one. I had some trouble with the images from that causing the game to crash. But I think that's on me for not having the proper up-to-date images in there. I'll just have to check out later. Yeah, Twitter can be very toxic. Because of my experience as a news producer, television news, I know how valuable it can be. When I got back into that business in 2012, a lot had changed since my last run. I was in there. It's been a long time. Going back to 2003. I had done radio and sports broadcasting and a lot of stuff since then, but Twitter is a quick way to get valuable information. You start interacting with people on there, and it gets, especially when it's like a disagreement, it can be both a waste of your time and a way for you to look bad at the same time, even if you're on the right. Everybody's hiring. To get over not getting Shinsuke Nakamura on DiBiase. Nakamura off the list. I can take Ricky Steamboat off, and I can take Ted DiBiase. So we'll need to hire another road agent or two. So we'll clear that out. Never met Shad. No, I've heard nothing but good things though. And obviously, when someone passes, people will say good things about him. But I had heard those good things before any of that happened. It was, from all indications, a wonderful father, great coworker, great person to be around. From everything I've heard from a wide swath of people. Heartbreaking. Powerful story too, that his son was out there and he directed the lifeguards to save his son, so he lived. And I mean, that's wow, that's tough. When he was out there, Shad was pursuing his dream as an actor. It's so difficult, especially when you're as tall and big and muscular as he is. There are a lot of roles that you're just not going to fit into because, now, granted, I'm sure there are plenty of roles that might have worked because you need that sort of a larger-than-life presence in plenty of different kinds of movies, but it's absolutely heartbreaking. So yeah, did you ever meet him? Yeah, it is, especially in the wrestling business where 1,001, whispers and rumors and everything. I never heard anything bad about him. It actually wouldn't surprise me for real life WWE to panic and like 2 weeks to a draft again. One day into this sim, I'm starting to hit the wall exhaustion-wise, so I think I'm going to have to wrap it up for tonight. So far, so good. I've got the offers out that I imagine when I go ahead and cycle through in the next few days. I'll say that for the next broadcast, and then I'll have it fresh in my head on will I've hired, who might have said no, or say they're going to stay retired if I can find some road agents that are willing to work for a reasonable rate. Get all that lined up and then start figuring out this whole television/events deal and how I can do house shows in a way that'll be effective for helping developmental talent for AEW while still being able to be a profitable company. It's funny because the last time I streamed, it was like a 5-hour stream and I didn't make it to the booking screen. But that was a lot of like exercising frustration kind of stuff. Whereas now I know nothing's going on. And I've been through it with that dry run from early, that trial run that provides some helpful information. But so that's going to be it for now. Thanks for watching. TEW fan, great talking with you. And I imagine sometime tomorrow, maybe late night again. I'm a night owl. It doesn't avail itself as far as at least a North American audience time-wise, but I'm going to do it when it's convenient for me and when I can do it. You know, I was watching Dynamite earlier. I was going to do that in the middle of watching TV. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. This is Lou Pickney Plays Total Extreme Wrestling 2020, episode number 3. Catch you next time, episode number 4. Thanks for watching.